The HomeTech podcast is supported by you. To find out more, go to HomeTech.fm/support.
This is the HomeTech podcast for Friday, February 8th from chilly Denver, Colorado. I'm Jason Griffin.
And from where I just had to turn off the air conditioner in Sarasota, Florida.
Balmy Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah. Seth Johnson.
How you doing, Seth?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Did you enjoy the Super Bowl?
Yeah. No, I slept through most of that. That was the worst game I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. It was not a very exciting game, I will admit. We ended up going over to a friend's house here in town, and I was thankful that we did. I was not going to lie, there's part of me that wanted to stay home and be a bum. It was a last-second invite, and I was telling my wife, well, we won't get to watch as much of the game, but there will be other kids there, and the kids will have a good time, so let's go for it. And I'm glad we did, because the game was a real snoozer, and so at least the kids had a good time.
Yeah, very boring. The best description I heard of it was on the Chapo Trap House podcast, which is a funny political podcast, but they described it as watching grown men do their taxes with their bodies. And I was like, that's accurate. That is accurate.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I didn't catch a lot of the commercials either. I don't know if there were any good ones. I was sort of chasing my kids around the house for the most part. Because the game wasn't really holding my attention. So I have to admit, I don't even really know if the commercials were any good this year.
I mean, there was the Bud Light really went after corn syrup people.
That one I did catch, and that was weird.
And then there was a Game of Thrones crossover where they killed the Bud Knight. Like, they ripped his head off. You know how the mountain rips that guy's head off? Like, they reenacted that scene, except they killed the Bud. And it was like... It was shocking because I was sitting there telling my wife about these really funny Bud Light, because she had been kind of like going back and forth with Rose and taking care, putting her down and that kind of thing. And then I was telling her, oh, these Bud Light commercials are really funny. Here's one. And we watched it and we were just standing there
Carnage.
Like, what just happened? Just like every Game of Thrones episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, what do you say we jump in? We've got a whole bunch of news that we're going to cover this week, a number of big stories here. I do want to mention really quickly that we are going to take a look at ISE stories next week. We were taking a look at the news cycle this week, and I think given the press a little bit of time to catch up on ISE, since as we are recording here on Wednesday, ISE's only been going on for about a day. So I've seen a number of stories come across, and one that we are going to talk about that is indirectly related to ISE. But we're going to jump into some home tech headlines, and then we'll get into that. What do you say, Seth?
Let's do it. In recent weeks, there's been a number of fairly alarming reports coming from Nest users about cameras being taken over by hackers who use their access to broadcast potentially terrifying messages or even ask Alexa speakers to play Justin Bieber. That's good. Yeah.
The humanity.
This isn't a security failure on Nest's part, but rather tricksters finding that they're able to log into strangers' Nest accounts with usernames and passwords that have been gathered and distributed around the internet. A Nest VP, Rishi Chandra, sent an email to users today to reiterate that the company's devices have not been hacked, and that there are some simple tips they can take to increase their account security. Like, don't use the same password on every single place, or just a common password. Use a password manager.
Yeah. It is becoming more and more important these days. And this is on the surface might look like a security breach at Nest, but it wasn't. There was a bunch of usernames and passwords breached and shared on the internet, and then people went around scouring for, I guess, Nest accounts, and voila, you've got Justin Bieber playing in your kitchen.
I wouldn't do Justin Bieber. I mean, I guess this goes back to our pre-show conversation, but my pick would be the Rick Roll song.
You'd Rick Roll him?
Yeah, we'd Rick Roll him for sure.
No, you're right. Those hackers could take a page out of your playbook.
It's those kids, the script kiddies is what they call them.
That's right. All right, well, moving on here. Ultraviolet, the initiative that gives users digital access to movies and TV series they've purchased, is due to shut down on July 31st. Bummer. According to information posted on the Ultraviolet website, the move is due to, quote, market factors, end quote, including the emergence of content services separate to Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet said it is working with ultraviolet retailers, which include services like Vudu, Flixster, and Kaleidoscape, to maximize users' continued access to movies and TV shows. However, users' ultraviolet libraries will be automatically closed and after ultraviolet shuts down. So that's a bummer. I don't know a lot about this service, but I know it was useful for certainly a cohort of people out there. So it's bad news.
It was one of the first and one of the most horribly set up. And I'm going to plug Richard Gunther's really excellent story about kind of like the history behind it over at the Digital Media Zone. And,
cool.
Yeah, and what you can do to save if you have some ultraviolet purchases somewhere in an ultraviolet library. Like what you can do to kind of like you can actually transfer them out and save them somewhere. Like Vudu is stepping up where you can save your purchases there. So there's a couple of different options you have, but you have to do it before July 31st, or they're gone into the ether. So
into the abyss.
Yep. A new company named Locast is touting itself as a public service to Americans by providing local broadcast signals over the internet in select cities. If you think this sounds similar to Aereo, you're not wrong. Aereo was sued out of existence by just about every broadcast network in a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Locast has taken a different approach, however. Instead of charging subscriptions for Locast, Locast formed itself as a nonprofit organization and is asking for donations. There's a key difference here, which allows for a copyright exemption that applies to nonprofits. The service now has about 60,000 users in Houston, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, Dallas, and Denver, as well as New York, and will soon add more in Washington, D.C. This is interesting. This is a really interesting service.
That is very interesting, and I'm wondering if that would be an awesome interview if we could get somebody on there. I think
we need to get this guy. Yeah, because he's not even a tech guy. Like, he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. I can do this.
That's great. That's a good find. Yeah, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. I know the Aereo thing was a big story when that all got shut down, and he appears to have found a loophole, and we'll see how long how long said loophole stays open. Hulu is preparing to roll out a new advertising format that users will notice whenever they pause a video. The new advertising unit is similar to a pop-up. When a user pauses a video, an image will appear on screen that acts as a transparent banner ad. And we'll have a link, by the way, in the show notes at HomeTech.fm/244 to a story that shows an image of what this would look like. The ad won't appear until a few seconds after the user hits pause. The goal is to keep the advertisement somewhat related to what people are watching.
Okay, well, so second pick of the week this week may be this image.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil it.
I don't have a problem with this. I mean, if it's paused and I don't have to hear the commercial and it doesn't interrupt my viewing experience and it helps make the service more profitable and stable, which I don't think Hulu needs a lot of help in that department, mind you. But the concept of it, I personally, I don't have an issue with this.
Yeah, me neither. I think this is similar. Remember,
it's non-intrusive.
Yeah. Remember there's you can get a Kindle, like you can buy a Kindle with, like when you turn it off, it actually displays an ad on the screen.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't use any battery to change whatever's on the screen. So it's kind of similar to that in my opinion. It's not like, I mean, they're tracking everything you're watching anyway. So
right.
Oh, well. Roku is in talks with Apple about supporting AirPlay 2, with the two companies currently working out details surrounding the partnership, according to a source familiar with the matter. The plans are not finalized and are subject to change. AirPlay 2 support is likely to arrive in the form of a Roku OS update that would likely extend to smart TVs running the software as well. It's unclear when the software update might be released. That'd be cool.
Yeah, interesting. And I know, like, we've got our TCL 6 series that I bought back in November that runs on Roku. So I'll be interested to kind of play around with that and see sort of what that user experience is like. Speaking of Apple TV here, Apple's media player now supports X-Ray on Amazon Prime's video app. This, if you're not familiar with X-Ray, it mines IMDb's production database to give you more information about your TV show or film that you're watching. By pausing or swiping up, X-Ray will display information such as what actor is on screen, the soundtrack currently playing, or other general tidbits about the show. This is not a new feature. X-ray is not new, but having it come to Apple TV is new, which will help it reach a wider audience.
Yeah, this is cool. I hear people talk about this all the time, and I since I use Apple TV, I don't get it, but now I will enjoy. I will bask in the IMDb glory.
That's right.
Fubo TV has announced that it's adding support for Apple TV's app, becoming the second major live TV streaming service to integrate with the app after the PlayStation Vue added support this fall. The added support means that Fubo TV users will be able to access live TV and sports directly from Apple's aggregated TV app on tvOS and iOS devices, adding live television into the mix alongside the various streaming offerings from services. That's pretty cool.
There you go.
Input
We
zero.
need to check out Fubo.
I don't know. I missed it.
I think it needs a better name. I could use some help in the marketing department there. Shifting gears here, Josh AI is making it easier to control the TV experience using voice control by allowing consumers to walk into a room, request a show, and leave the rest to the home automation system. Users don't need to dictate which room they're in or which streaming service they want to use. Josh does all of that work on the back end thanks to new integrations with Adlona video matrix switchers, as well as existing drivers for Roku, select TVs, projectors, and receivers. So this is kind of cool. A great addition for voice control in the home where you have distributed video and you want to be able to conveniently call up different shows in different rooms. This is a pretty neat addition.
Yeah, and needed for the target market that Josh AI was aiming for. I know this has been on their roadmap for a long time. I've worked closely with them for a while, and I'm glad to see that they're expanding the product line. This is pretty big for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, Jason, there's a big story that came across today. I think it was today, which is like right on the the dawn of ISE. We get this huge press release from and bomb that was dropped. I guess it depends on what side of the road you're on here.
Yeah,
but it's either really good news or really, really bad news that Control4 bought NEEO, which is basically the end of the line for the DIY side of that remote control company.
Yeah, it's not basically the end of the line. It is the end of the line.
The line has been drawn, and it
there's
stops
no gray
right
area there. Yeah. There's very, very black and white. Yeah, interesting. The story broke on the 4th, so it'll be a few days since by the time this airs. But yeah, really, really big story. NEEO was obviously. We've had Raphael from NEEO on the show, I think, a couple times. I know we've had him on at least once. Really like those guys. I like the team over at NEEO. I had a chance to meet them and hang out and go have dinner with them when I was at ISE a couple of years back. And great team, really great vision, great product design. And I know they had, what was it, $1.5 million on their Kickstarter way back when they did that. And that was a record at the time. Not sure if it still is, but yeah, I don't know. You got to wonder what really the backstory was here in terms of, like NEEO was a company that was very dedicated to its users, and the whole mission was like to bring that really high quality level of sort of control and user experience into a more broad ecosystem, like the DIY consumer market, right? Raph talked a lot about that. He's a former integrator. And you just have to wonder if maybe they were, maybe the path ahead for this remote turned out to be harder to get the kind of broad market adoption that they wanted, than they thought that path was going to be. Like maybe they were struggling, and this was a sort of an acquisition of opportunity for both sides, right? For Control4 to pick up what they're getting, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But looking at it from NEEO's perspective, lots of questions in my mind, and I can only speculate about their reasoning.
Well, I mean, there's like 16 million reasons I can think of. Like if you look at what they purchased them for, $11 million in cash. I mean, that's hard cold cash. Couple of NEEO employees were issued $1.5 million in equity. Control4 stock, which is probably roughly 18% less, I think, than that's when they got it. Yeah. big tank on the stock just the other day. But plus the Control4 assumed $4.6 million of their debt, which, that's it's a lot of money to be out selling even a $300 remote.
How much was the debt?
$4.6 million.
Yeah.
That's a ton of money. So, but I can. All right, from the bad side is like the Control4 has basically said that they're ceasing sales. There's no more. There are going to be no more sales on the NEEO remotes. They're done selling those. And I think they were going to do. Yeah, they're only going to provide critical updates for the next 24 months, starting today. So that leaves anyone using their $300 NEO remote just kind of like out of luck for the next 2 years, right? I mean, there's really not, if you were expecting features to be developed for it or anything to be put on it that was coming, that's done. There's nothing else is going to be invested into that to make that product any better.
Right.
Which really, I mean, really sucks because I can only think of like two direct replacements for that. One would be the Logitech, which I just can't bring myself to buy one. I just can't do it.
Just can't get over that hump.
No, I can't. And the other one is sitting on my desk here, which is Cavo, which we made fun of when they were made out of wood grain. But now that they're shipping a $100 box, which has been on like fire sale for the last couple of weeks for like $59. I gotta say, I mean, the Cavo, if you put the Cavo next to the NEEO, I mean, it's going to do more for you in regards to AV control than the NEEO was able to do. Now, as far as like home automation, I don't know. NEEO was like kind of had feelers out for that too. Like you can integrate with hue lights and that kind of thing. But I don't know. To me, it was never appropriate to control hue lights from my remote. But I mean, to each their own, I guess.
Right.
There's a million other ways you can do that these days, and maybe Cavo will introduce that. Well, I guess they kind of said that they weren't going to do that. So. If you're looking strictly to replace the AV control side of it, Cavo is a good thing. But if you need that integration with, hue lights and Sonos and all that stuff, maybe Logitech is the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Eric in the chat room is saying, too many people content with their 5 different remotes. And I think I think there's some truth to that when you look at the market as a whole. I think a lot of people are actually content with that. I think sometimes, and we've talked about this on the show a lot, Seth, like sometimes all of us, and I'm by no means immune to this, we get sort of in our bubble of being technologically inclined, and we like technology, and so we tend to project like our sort of wants or needs onto maybe a broader swath of the market than actually exists. So I think that so it's just been interesting to watch the DIY companies, and like I suspect a lot of them are struggling to find like a real broad sort of adoption. And I think that this is really like I'm with you. I feel bad for the NEEO community and their diehard passionate users. I'm sure they had quite a bit of them, quite a few of them. And like you said, this is sort of the end of the road. I mean, Control4. I did see in the reporting that they're going to continue supporting them, whatever that actually translates to in the real world. I think probably the days are numbered. It could be. I don't think in the short term, I don't see Control4 doing anything drastic to cut users off necessarily. I'm not sure, but it's definitely a bummer for those folks. I think. There are some pros to it as well. On the positive side, I think it's exciting to think about what a team like the team at NEEO that really has a great design aesthetic and presumably some really good intellectual property behind the remote. Some patents were talked about in some of the reporting around several different, the Palm sensor. Battery life was another one that people were speculating about. Like, is there some intellectual property there? Control4 is not commenting on that specifically. But point being, like, the merging of a company like that's got a lot of value to bring to the table with a company like Control4 that has all of the resources that they do, it could yield some pretty cool stuff in the future.
Well, yeah, and I don't really. I mean, I don't think you're going to see a NEEO remote for. Well, maybe you will. I don't know, but I don't think really you'd see a NEEO remote for Control4 like tomorrow. This was simply like what they call an acqui-hire. Like they bought NEEO for the talent. They bought it for the team. We talked to Raphael. He mentioned that they had put this entire team and system together to build and QC their devices and everything. So
yep.
they have all of this production experience behind them. And I mean, if you go over and look at the Control4 website, they don't have enough product people at that. You look at Control4 and their what are they called? The classifieds or whatever, the job openings. I mean, they've been sitting on a project manager for lighting for like almost a year now. I guess. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's been a while since they've had a dedicated product manager for lighting on board. So like they need people, they need talent, and this is definitely one way to get it. If you can't attract them with job offers on a website, like you go out and buy them. And on the business side, I mean, there's certainly advantages for Control4 to continue purchasing companies to kind of make their stock look a little bit better, even though Wall Street didn't like that answer. This month,
the earnings.
Yeah, long term, it's a good, kind of staves off having to report some bad quarters. So, I'm not going to pretend like this is a business show, but I know that's one thing you do. You can kind of like sandbag a little bit and push those numbers up a little bit more if you're able to claim that profits are coming in, even if they're coming in from speakers. So.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what they do with this team, though. And I mean, there's Control4's got a lot of talent there now. Like they've picked up Hiji, the package people. They've got their networking. They've got Triad. I mean, it's become like a pretty big powerhouse. I'm thinking
Charlie
about like
Kindle.
Yeah, Charlie. Well, I mean, Charlie Kindle looks like he's like at the leading edge of this, right? Like the picture on the press release was Kindle sitting next to Raphael, like having a good laugh about something, So like that's got his stamp like all over it. So, but I know Control4 is out there aggressively trying to purchase companies in the industry, and I think about like. You think about like how this industry was set up traditionally, where everybody kind of like Elan and Crestron and like the chassis and stuff that we used to buy that were all same label all the way down the rack. Everything you bought, I mean, could be Crestron labeled and branded, and it all integrated together. And now Control4 has kind of started to do the same thing, except they're doing it by purchasing other brands that already exist and are well respected inside the industry. Yeah.
Build it or buy it, right?
Yeah. So it's very interesting to see what this going on. And it's just one other facet and one other way to build up the company. And I think they've got a pretty good portfolio because of it. And now they've got some really good, chops on, product team, like a product team for remotes and touchscreens and that kind of thing put together who I mean, you and I have the NEEO remote. It's a great little piece of hardware.
Yeah.
And if I put it next to my SR, my beloved SR250 or SR260 remotes, like one of them looks a lot better than the other, even though, the 260, the 2X zeros are like workhorses, right? I mean, they work and they do their job, but they're not pretty about it. So.
No.
I'm glad to see that Control4 is, trying to step up their game and get a better product out into the end user's hands.
Right. Yeah. Well said. I don't know how much more I can add. This will be really interesting to see how it pans out. My surface level understanding, at least, is that Raf and his team will continue to operate from their home base in Switzerland. I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't know if you've seen specific reporting on it, but again, that's my understanding of it.
I think that's the way to. Yeah, I didn't see anybody moving to Draper
from Switzerland to Draper.
Yeah. It's no, I don't think that would happen. But
culture shock.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I can add one more thing, and that's the fact that like I wonder how much a universal, like what is the use for a universal remote in tomorrow's market, right? So like if you think down the road, like in these bespoke systems that the integrators and are putting in, like you definitely need a universal remote. There's more than one source. There's video distribution. There's audio distribution. But like we're moving towards input zero. And for the average Joe, do they need a $300 remote? Like, do they need an $89 remote? You know, and the headache that comes along with setting that up. If all they do, in my case out here, it's kind of like I have input zero. Like I turn my TV on and I grab the little Apple TV remote and I turn TV on while I'm working here at the desk and I sit there and watch it. And it's like,
right.
How I don't need a $300 remote. I don't need any kind of remote to do that. All the channels, I can watch live TV. I can do everything right there on the Apple TV. And it's the sooner we get to that input zero, the quicker these types of remotes go away.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's a good exit for them. And, you know, maybe in a market that the demand for like a universal remote, they can look down the road and see like, man, the demand looked like it was here 2 or 3 years ago when we did this Kickstarter. But now, like, if we look 2 or 3 years in the future, demand really just goes away. And what can we do to kind of like keep this company going? I think you have to look at it that way too. I think in the future, we're not going to, I mean, why would we need Logitech remotes? You know, like it's not going to be the same type of setup, you know, five years from now.
Yeah, I think
completely different.
And you sort of bifurcated that conversation, right? There's always going to be a market for those universal remotes in like maybe the highly complex media room or theater, or certainly in anything with distributed video, multiple sources, things of that nature. But I agree with you. I mean, I find myself in our living room here, we've got a very basic setup. We've got a TV and an Apple TV, and that's it. And like I use the Apple TV remote. Unfortunately, side note, the CEC, you know, the CEC control over HDMI.
Oh, the control,
for the Apple TV and the TCL 6 series, the power on, power off doesn't work, which is a bummer. So I do have to use the TCL remote to turn the TV on, and then the Apple TV remote for everything else. But I think you're right. When you look at the broad market, there are some headwinds there, definitely, for a universal remote.
Yeah, and the devices of that type. So I think somebody posted in the hub earlier, like some I have to go find them, but they're like earlier when all this conversation was talking about, like they posted like Logitech's earnings or something from Logitech's earnings, and they said that their smart home business in particular was down like some ungodly amount, like double, like 34% or something like that. So like it was that particular thing will struggle. I mean, but you know, mice and everything else that Logitech makes will continue to sell. So I'm not really concerned too much about Logitech. They seem to be doing well, but it's interesting to see. Here's the Owen Maddock was posting these today. The smart home was like 49% year over year down.
Wow.
Which is massive. And in Q3, he put this in Q3, our sales in the smart home group declined 49% to represent 2% of our overall sales. While we continue to see various long-term opportunities in the broader smart home market, we will be prudent in how we deploy our resources in the near term. Wow. So maybe just thinking about this, like maybe the universal remote is the sunset is coming on that.
Put out to pasture.
Put out to pasture. Yeah, I was looking for something. You had it there.
Yeah. Eric in the chat room had mentioned earlier that maybe Logitech was trying to get rid of Harmony, sell it off. Maybe they'll find a buyer. Maybe they won't. But I wasn't sure.
I know Control4 may want to purchase.
Yeah. Now that you read those numbers, that does not paint a pretty picture. So no. I think it all harkens back to the fact that the whole market, the whole landscape of this kind of heralded DIY smart home that 5 years ago, when we started doing the show, everybody thought was really finally becoming a reality. It's a tough road. And I think for those out there who are willing to put in the elbow grease and make it a hobby, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do that you couldn't do 10 years ago or even 6-7 years ago. But for the vast majority, the average Joe out there, it's still a really difficult, it's a tough nut to crack for companies who are trying to really go out and appeal to them with sort of mass market solutions. It's a really interesting trend we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yep. And Eric's really adding to the show tonight. Also mentioning Lowe's folding up Iris. I think we talked about that last week, but I'm not sure. I've had a rough couple weeks here, sleeping and whatnot. It's been a lot of work.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, we didn't hit that in the headlines, but we actually should have talked about that. They're bringing it down. I think they were looking for a buyer there and couldn't find one. So the Lowe's Iris solution is being completely shut down. No further support, as I understand it, moving forward. So, yeah, I mean, I think the DIY smart home is it's looking like a tough, people still trying to thread that needle, but I don't know.
It's very similar to the pro smart home, right? Like you and I followed this. This is exactly what happens. Like you are still an early adopter, right? Like the chips have not fallen where they're supposed to lay, and like you're navigating and trying to figure out like what security system do I have? Oh, Lowe's is a pretty good brand. I'll use theirs. There's no way to predict and tell what company is going to have a good quarter and just decide to shave a smart home division off,
right.
And in the same manner, like 10 years ago, there was no way to tell if your $30 or $40,000 investment into smart home technology the company was even going to exist the next year. Like how many of those Colorado VNet homes, put in, $100,000 worth of lighting that had to get ripped out. So like, it was dicey for us as custom integrators for a long time, cutting our teeth and getting into this newer technology. And then like now we're just kind of seeing it play out again in a different market with I don't want to say like lower price points is less of a big deal, because I mean, if you had a Lowe's Iris system and you had invested a few $100s into it, and then we're paying them, X amount per month to have it running. Like, I mean, that's still money that came out of your pocket into a product that was, hopefully going to be around a little bit longer than what, 3 years.
Certainly degrees of impact though there, right? Like you think about somebody who had their entire home fitted with Colorado VNet lighting versus a $300 hub, but I get what you're saying. It's a pain in the butt either way.
Yeah,
but no, you're right. I mean, all of these things, it's all technology, and it's all where are you gonna put your chips. And I think anytime you're making one of those decisions, you've got to look at the company and ask yourself, are they likely to be around in 5 or 10 years? Right? I mean, that's the question.
And flat out, like everything that exists today, whether it's Alexa, Google, Apple, like flat out everything that exists today, you're gambling. You're playing with early adoption right now. This is not mainstream. If it's, you'll know when it's mainstream when the stuff exists in your house and it just works. Like, I'll lean back on that show. Oh, geez, I'm trying to remember. It's on Hulu. It's about them going to Mars. I'll lean back on that.
Yeah, the first.
Is it the first? That's what was on the tip of my tongue.
Something like that, I think, right? Yeah, the first.
Yeah, it's about them going to Mars and being the first people. But like the technology that exists in their homes is not something they interact with in a way that you and I interact with our technology. Like you walk in the room, the lights turn on, and that it's just known that's how it's going to work. You reach over, you tap the lamp, it turns on. Like that's the goal. That's what we're all aiming for. And we have all these, disconnected different systems that are trying to do that for us right now. And until it's flush and level, and everybody, you can go to IKEA and get your tried-free stuff that works with your Apple iPhone, with whatever technology is already installed in the house 5 years ago, like that's when it's mainstream. And right now
that's when we pack up and end the show.
Yeah, exactly. yeah.
All right, nothing left to talk about here.
Yeah, we're done. I mean, it'll be show like we'll hit, we'll be in quad digits at that point, Jason. But like, I suspect it's still a number of years out for that, but. We're still in the early adoption phase, and it's ramping up, but we're not near mainstream right now. We're still early adopting this stuff.
Agreed. All of the links and topics that we've discussed on our episode here can be found on our show notes at HomeTech.fm/244. Once again, that's HomeTech.fm/244. While you're there, don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter, which includes even further analysis, weekly show reminders, and occasional updates about all of the great things going on here in the world of home tech.
Don't forget, you can join us in the chat room live Wednesday starting 7 to 7:30, somewhere around there. Find out more at HomeTech.fm/live, and you can follow us on Twitter, too. That's generally where the announcements come from. So I'll tweet out an announcement with the link and everything at HomeTech Podcast on Twitter.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Seth. Well, we've got a doozy, I think, of a pick of the week this week. Actually, I think a video this week is what we're doing, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, timely. The only thing that I think is coming out of ISE that I'm going to be super impressed with is this incredible video at, I think it's an LG booth. That is, how do you describe this? It's like a curved, it's got a bunch of curved screens kind of like up over your head. It wraps down, curves around, and then drops down. And they've got like this rainforest scene where like you're looking, when you look up, you're looking into the tree canopy.
It's crazy.
You look down, you look into like a waterfall, and the waterfall's curved even. Like, oh man, it is absolutely amazing. And when I saw that, I'm like, well, there's the pick of the week. That is beautiful. Yeah,
no, it is. It's an impressive array for sure, and something that, you're not going to see in your average home, certainly.
No.
Really, really cool though. Super impressive display. I agree. If I was there at ISE, that'd be a showstopper for me. I go back and sort of imagine my days as an integrator out in the Los Angeles area, and the 1% of the 1%, right? I could see one of those guys sort of watching this video and being like, I need that in my 25,000 square foot mansion in Beverly Hills. And that will happen. One of these days that will happen. And if you're an integrator on that project, send us some pictures. But for now, we can all sort of look at this video with googly eyes and just marvel at the amazing display technology that's happening right now. It really is an incredible time in that field.
Yeah, anything you want to do with video, I've said this for a couple of years, but it's just even more true today than it ever was, is anything you want to do with video, especially in commercial, you can do. Like, the answer is yes. The next question is how much
money you got.
How much money you got, but the answer is yes, it can be done. And this just goes to show, I don't know if these are like production panels or they're custom for this. It'd be interesting to find out, but man, this is it's really, because it looks like, to me, like if you're looking at some of those panels look flat and straight, but then some of them are curved, and I don't know if, I can't tell if like it's the same curve and they're just like joining them up and matching them, or like it's an entirely flexible panel and you just like get in there like track lighting and kind of like, get in there and bend it up and then set the frames in place and then wallpaper the screen technology on there. I don't know, but like it is a cool display.
It is very cool. So if you want to check that out, HomeTech.fm/244. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, picks of the week, ideas for a show topic, give us a shout. We would love to hear from you. Our email address is feedback@HomeTech.fm. Once again, that's feedback@HomeTech.fm. Or if you would prefer, you can head on over to HomeTech.fm/feedback and fill out our online form.
Yep, and we want to give a big thank you to everyone who supports the show, but especially those who are able to financially support our show through our Patreon page. If you don't know about our Patreon page, head on over to HomeTech.fm/support to learn how you can support HomeTech for as little as $1 a month. Any pledge over $5 a month gets you a shout out on the show, but every single pledge gets you an invite to our private Slack channel, The Hub, where you and other supporters of the show can gather every day for the inside baseball conversations about all aspects of home technology and ISE. There's some really good conversations about, some of the guys are actually at ISE this year, and pretty cool to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's great. We've got a lot of a large contingent of supporters of our show here that are over across the pond in the UK and elsewhere, all across the world. And the Hub is a great place to connect and engage in really great conversations. So thank you to everybody who is part of that community. It's a lot of fun. We really do appreciate it. If you cannot support our show financially but would like to support us otherwise, we would appreciate a review on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Doing so lets us know how we're doing, gives us some feedback, and we're always trying to improve here. And just as important, it also helps other people discover the show. So once again, if you have a few minutes to go, give us a review on your podcast app of choice. We would really appreciate it.
Sounds good. Well, Jason, I think that wraps up this week. I'm sure there'll be some more news coming out of ISE over the weekend, and we'll sure to pick it back up and talk next week.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that, and hope you have a great week, Seth. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Have a good one.